Patty Wilson, and I'm here today to talk a bit about intuitive counseling. And my business is called The Spiritual Coach, and people will say to me, "What is a spiritual coach?" And essentially, it really means that I do intuitive counseling. I have a background in counseling and psychology. I was a traditional psychotherapist or mental health counselor for about 25 years before I shut down that practice and began doing spiritual coaching. I felt really called to doing spiritual coaching because I am a psychic and I was not able to use those gifts in my work. And now I am, which I love. So I want to talk to you about that. Um, a client of mine once said to me, "You know, I love seeing you. You're the best of both worlds." And I asked her, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, you've got all that earthly, grounded psychology background and experience, but you also have the spiritual side where you're in touch with spirit and you're able to work with that energy as well." And I thought that was a perfect description, really, of what I do and why I love it so much. Um, so what does a typical session look like? I thought I would just explain some of the components, some of the things that I might typically do. As soon as I connect with you, and I do most of my work over the phone, and I have clients in many countries, one, two, three, four that I can think of right now offhand. And so as soon as I hear your voice, and sometimes I actually check in before I dial your number, but I'm instantly, what I'm doing initially is I am doing a psychic reading, for lack of a better word. In other words, I'm tapping into your energy field and I am getting to know you. And I'm getting to know you in a very sincere and deep level because I'm reading your energy. That helps me to understand you really quickly, and that is really helpful because you want to cut through all the chit chat and really get to getting help and getting through the changes that you want to make in a session like this. So the second thing that I typically do is besides talking and doing all the stuff that we do when we've got a problem and you're kind of unloading and talking and explaining. Um, but as you're doing that, what I'm doing a lot of the time is I'm receiving a psychic downloads. Never know what to call these things, but downloads, messages from my spirit guides that work with me. And they've been around long before I even started doing spiritual work. Um, and I get these really pretty clear messages. And again, when spirit gives a psychic a message, the psychic has to interpret, and they will often kind of choose to use people that have a background that will enable them to get their message across easily. So the message from spirit is coming in intuitively or psychically or however you want to name it. Um, but my background in psychology, I have a master's in counseling psychology and a master's in education, in adult education. And as I said, 25 years experience. So I'm able to very rapidly kind of plug into the knowledge base, the worldly, earthly knowledge base. And it isn't as difficult for spirit to try to explain to me, "Hey, here's what we want you to do," if that makes sense. So we're a really good team, basically. The other thing I do, which I just think is fabulous, I do remote viewing. And I use it in a number of ways. But remote viewing, remote means I'm sitting here in my office in Fort Myers and I am psychically connecting or viewing with someone somewhere else in the world. And this remote viewing is really useful when someone calls me and says, "I'm having a problem with my husband, my wife, my boyfriend, my neighbor, my sister, my mother," on and on. Because let's face it, most of the um, things that we come to this earth plane to learn involves relationships. And when one party comes to me and talks about an issue they're having in a relationship, what's missing is the energy of the other party. Like, who is this person? And in order to truly create some kind of a healing and to bring peace and to bring skill so the person can learn skills in dealing with this relationship. You really need both energies, ideally. I did a lot of marriage counseling in my day and really liked having both people sitting in front of me. So here I still have both people sitting in front of me, so to speak. And I have to admit, I've had people say, isn't that kind of like unethical? You know, you're kind of spying on people psychically. And I thought I would answer that here too. Um, Other souls will not allow me to come into their energy field if they feel harm. I am highly ethical. I was trained as a psychotherapist in ethics, so that guides my work always. And I believe that my gifts of my psychic abilities are spiritual gifts, and I work with them in a way that respects the sacredness of that. And I always have the intention and state the intention that this is for the highest and best of both parties. Not only for you, the client that's called me, but for maybe this neighbor that I'm checking in with that you're having problems with. So it's always done ethically, and I've never had anyone that wouldn't allow me in. And it can happen. I've talked to other psychics, and they say, "Oh yeah, this I just can't read this person. They won't let me in." So everybody has free will, and they don't have to let me spy on them, so to speak. Um, but it's really helpful, and it helps me help you resolve issues. I had a niece who it was on dating sites and would always call and say, okay, I'm meeting a guy named Fred. Can you check him out for me? So I would do a little service for her and do a bit of a reading on this guy before she met him for coffee. But it really can be helpful, and it's something that I think is great to use. So those are sort of the components. But I spend about a third of every session in a deep theta brainwave state, a deep psychic state, doing healing, doing energy healing. And I'm a practitioner of what is called theta healing. And I always conclude sessions doing theta healings. In other words, I look at what are your beliefs, what are your patterns, what are your issues, what are your blocks, and what's holding you back. And I ask your permission to energetically clear those issues, those beliefs, those patterns, those programs. And I usually spend about 20 minutes doing that at the end of the session. And that's where the real growth happens. So that's kind of what an intuitive counseling session looks like. And I hope I've explained it well enough. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. Um, I charge $150 an hour for an intuitive counseling or spiritual coaching session. As I say, I do my sessions over the phone, and I can be reached at um, the spiritual coaching.ca. First of all, if you're curious, that's my website. So it's spiritualcoaching.ca because I was originally in Canada. And my email is spiritualcoach@hotmail.com. And my phone number is 239-270-1876. And I would love to hear from you and help you on this beautiful earthly journey. Thank you.